Welcome. We appreciate you joining with us to watch this message. We pray it will bless you, that we'll all learn, grow, and become more like Jesus. Let's join in watching the message at this time.
I'm guessing that all of us have stories to tell of times when we were in school. Stories of teachers' pets. Now, I don't know about you, I never was a teacher's pet, so I can kind of relate to this story. Mrs. M was one of those teachers that loved to have her teachers' pets. And if you weren't, you knew that too. When Mrs. M gave math tests, she didn't print them off. Rather, she would write the page number on the board that the students were to turn to and do like problems 1, 5, and 8. Then there'd be another page number. Turn to that page and do these problems on that page. And invariably, almost every test that she gave in math, someone turned to the wrong page and thus did the wrong numbers. Or they had the right page and did the wrong numbers, which you can see the anxiety in a test. They're looking at the board, they're looking down, they're looking at the board, and it's easy to get messed up. Well, she always graded fairly that if you got the problem right, that you made the mistake and copied the wrong problem, she'd give you credit. But she grew frustrated. And finally she said, okay, no more credit. You're old enough that you need to make sure you've got the right page, make sure you got the right problems, and I don't care if you've got the problem correct. If it's the wrong problem, it's wrong. She's very, very stern about that. And the students took the test. When they got done with the test, there was one very unhappy student. It was the teacher's favorite student that had got the wrong problems done. I don't know if it was the wrong page or the wrong problems on the right page, but several problems were missed. Therefore, that teacher's pet would get them counted as wrong. After quite a scene, Mrs. M decided, well, yeah, I'll give you credit for him. Much to the chagrin of the other students that understood there would be no grace. But this wasn't the only problem that Mrs. M had done. That there was another time in class, and by the way, these are true stories. She was trying to encourage one student that they could do better. And to do that, she said, you're not like, and she named the student, who it's impossible for them to do better because they just don't have it. They're never going to amount to anything in life. Talk about cutting a student down. It's all about value. It's all about giving people value, and Mrs. M had that all wrong on how to give value to her students. She was good at devaluing them. We're in a new series today. We're starting with something a little bit different. Joseph's Lonely Pilgrimage. This is not a rags to riches story. It is a prideful story cut to humility so that God could raise Joseph back up once again. It's not a fun journey that he went on. The story of Joseph is like going to the School of Hard Knocks. Anybody ever attend the School of Hard Knocks? Do we have any graduates of the School of Hard Knocks? Oh, really? Okay. I thought one never graduated from the school. The School of Hard Knocks is not in a class. It's that we go to life and we make our mistakes and we get knocked around, and sometimes we do things that are stupid, and sometimes we do things that life just happens to us, and it's like getting hit upside of the head with a 2x4. And the story of Joseph is, well, he was just a jerk, and he needed swatted upside the head with a 2x4. And this is what happened to him today. Thus our title, Life in a Pit of Vipers. Now, we're not talking about snake handling or anything like that. We're talking about that if you live in a dysfunctional family and you're dysfunctional, sooner or later somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get bitten. Well, for those of you that are Bible students, let me just catch you up to date with where we're at today. Remember last week, this last series, we were talking about Jacob and his slow work of progress. It just took him forever to really catch on to what God wanted him to do and how to act. But he raised a family of dysfunctional people, of sons and so forth. And last week we talked about Dinah that got raped. And so 2 of Jacob's sons went in and didn't just kill the guilty guy, they killed all the men of the town. Then the rest of the brothers went in and looted the whole town, the women, the children, the livestock, everything that they wanted. Well, after this happened, I don't know if Jacob was finally getting a little bit smarter along the way or what, but he told everyone in his family and all of the servants and everyone, bring me all of your pagan idols, your household gods, all these things that you've taken, brought along with you from the homeland at Haran, and even the gold, even their earrings. He said, bring them to me, and he buried them under a tree, and then they left the area so they would not get dug back up again. They went to the area of Bethel. Now, if that rings a bell, it's because if you remember when Jacob was fleeing from his brother, afraid of getting killed, the first night that he stayed and he slept, he used a rock for a pillow, and there was this dream, what we call Jacob's ladder, of angels ascending and descending on this staircase, and then God was at the top, said, I'm going to make you into a great nation, I'm going to bring you back to this land, and this is going to be your land. Well, so Jacob and his family now moved back to Bethel, and God reaffirmed all this with him once again, only this time without the ladder and all those things. Sometime along the way, Rachel, his favorite wife, became pregnant for the second time. Remember, Joseph is her firstborn. Except this time when Rachel gave birth, she died soon afterwards of complications. And Jacob named this last son Benjamin. She can kind of relate with the tribe of Benjamin later on down the road we'll talk about. And sometime after this then, give it a little bit more time, we don't know the space, but Jacob and Esau's father died. So now Isaac's out of the picture. So we have 2 families now. We've got Esau's family, they're over here, and we have Jacob's family, and that's the one that we're going to follow. And so what we're talking about then is we're beginning with the life of Joseph. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son because he was the firstborn of his favorite wife. But that also meant that Jacob spoiled Joseph. And so let's begin reading Genesis chapter 37 with verse 3. Now Israel, that would be Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. We're beginning to see how this dysfunctional family lives. Favorite son of Jacob. Jacob spoils him. It gives him this ornate robe. That way every other son, every other child, everybody knows who the favorite son is. And as you could imagine, Joseph got a little prideful. So it's not just Jacob at this point. Now it's Joseph who's got this pride problem. Now, in ancient times, whenever anyone had a dream, that meant something, a prophecy, or that had some meaning to it. And Joseph started dreaming. Verse 6. He, that is Joseph, said to his brothers, to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Meaning of the dream. Joseph saying, I'm going to be the one that you're going to bow down to. How do you like that if you're the older brothers? Now remember, Joseph is brother number 10. Or actually number 11. So he's got 10 older brothers in him. And little brother is telling older brothers, you're going to bow down to me someday. That balloon's not flying very well that he wasn't done. Let's go to verse 9. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. This dream meant that not only his 11 brothers, now 11 specifying all the rest of his brothers, not only were they going to bow down to Joseph, but even his father was going to bow down. You get the feeling that Joseph's getting a little bit of pride here? After all, these dreams have meaning. But even Jacob, his father, got upset and chewed Joseph out this time. Well, you can imagine all the goings on of so forth of the family, but one of the ways that Jacob was spoiling his son Joseph was also by evidently keeping him at home. Now, he should have been out helping watch over the flocks by now with his other brothers, but evidently he was back home with Daddy, while the other brothers were out watching the flocks and taking care of them. Now, to watch the flocks, it wasn't just taking them out in the pasture next door to you. This grazing would take place miles away. And of course, you got to keep moving the flocks. So when Jacob sent Joseph out to find your brothers, see how they're doing, Joseph had to look for him. And it took him a while. He eventually found his brothers and started walking toward them, but his brothers also saw him coming. Verse 18, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Reuben was the oldest of all the sons. And maybe you're one of the oldest of the family, of your siblings. And Reuben had the responsibility. He probably didn't like Joseph any more than his brothers did, but he still had the responsibility to watch over all of his brothers, all of the younger siblings that he had. And so here he's going to act on that to make sure that nothing was going to happen to Joseph, take him back home a little bit later. So the brothers, he came and so forth, and Reuben had this plan. Verse 23. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into a cistern. The cistern was empty, there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. How's that for brotherly love? Such sympathy. Let's not kill him. We'll sell him. We'll get money from him. We can divide the money up. We'll sell him to the Ishmaelites. They'll take him to Egypt. We'll never see our brother again. Fool you with his dreams. Don't you just love the brotherly love? Verse 29. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes, which is, let me pause here. Tearing his clothes would be the ancient way of great distress, great anxiety, or mourning. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." Joseph's gone. They took his robe, dipped it in the goat's blood, take it back to their father, Jacob. And I don't know whether they told him that a ferocious animal got Joseph or whether Jacob just kind of concluded that on his own. And then Jacob started going into mourning. Not just any mourning, but deep mourning so that no one could console him. The Midianites, meanwhile, took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to one of Pharaoh's officials by the name of Potiphar. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks. This is a sad, sad story of a dysfunctional father that raised dysfunctional boys. And the result is that Joseph was hurt, not physically, but the mental anguish resulted in their father's, Jacob's, mental anguish. And eventually, although the brothers don't know it yet, their extreme mental anguish and fear. That story will be coming up also later on. But what caused all this damage? What's the root cause? Yeah, Jacob started, but what does this all add up to? Well, it's a lack of giving value. We get hurt when we are not valued. We get hurt when we're not valued. Now, everybody in this story is to blame. Every last one of them. Jacob started it, raised dysfunctional brothers. Just different things were going on. And so it's not pointing at any one person. It's everybody's involved with it. The favoritism. And then Joseph's pride. And that pride led to his brothers hating him. If he had not been prideful, probably his brothers wouldn't have hated him, but he was living it out also. And see, when you look at this family, it's as though Jacob raised a brood of vipers, snakes. When I was a teenager, I loved reptiles, amphibians, fish, snakes, frogs, any kind of an animal, really. And we used to vacation in Kentucky, and we'd go to the state parks and stay at the resorts and so forth for a couple days or whatever. But traveling the roads in Kentucky, you never know what you're going to find. And one day we passed a sign that said, the rattlesnake pit. Whoa, hey, I got to see this. Hey, northern boy, I never saw rattlesnakes. Let's see this. So Dad and Mom stopped, and there was this pen, probably about 8 by 8 or 7 by 7, something like that. And if you watch the Indiana Jones movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they're on top, they find the room that the ark is in. They look down, and Saul asks, Indy, why does the floor move? Well, it was snakes. And that pretty much describes what I was looking at in this pit. The floor moved. There must have been 100 rattlesnakes in there. And they're slowly crawling, and they're rattling, and it was creepy, really. And I thought, man, how horrible it would be to throw someone in or stick your hand in there. It was a death trap. But this is the kind of situation that Jacob raised his family in, if you can understand the analogy. It was a problem just waiting to happen, the way that he raised them. And we can see the hurt. We can see the pain. We can probably feel the pain of his brothers, not justifying what they did, but we can feel the pain that they were feeling because they were not valued like their little brother was getting valued. And he was getting all these things and they weren't. Things build up. Take a physical illness. It starts a lot of times inside of us. We don't know it's there until it gets bad enough and finally it surfaces in some way. Or mental anguish. We have these anxieties and eventually they work themselves to the surface. A lot of us remember when Mount St. Helens blew out in Washington State. All that pressure, the lava built up in there and it couldn't get out. There was no way of venting, and all at once the top of the mountain blows off and ash and lava go everywhere and devastation. I've never been out to Yellowstone, but the geysers are the same thing. It's a lava bed basically in the ground with this hot water, with this water there, and the lava heats the water up, and there's no escape. So all at once the geyser bursts out of the ground. And we're the same way. Unless we've got a channel to get rid of our anxiety and our problems, we're going to crack. It might be a simple mental issue, or it could be mental disease. And the fact that we can only take so much before we blow. And this is the breaking point that Joseph's brothers came to. Not justifying it, but their father Jacob and Joseph kept pushing the issue, heating it up, to finally something had to give. Now, each of us get hurt when we're not valued, but it also works the other way around too. See, others get hurt when we fail to give value. Others get hurt when we fail to give value. We fail real bad in this country to give value, and it's getting worse. Let's start with babies. No. Let's start before the babies are born. Abortion. We don't give value to the unborn anymore. I know we do, church does, but many in this country don't give value to them anymore. Then they're born, and then they're often ignored. They're not treated right as little kids. And then they get a little bit older. They get their mobile phones, social media. Hey, I can make unkind comments to you because I don't have to face you. I'm out of your reach. You can't hit me, so I can say unkind things. And we keep devaluing. Hey, the suicide rate has gone crazy right now in this country. And even other countries. A lot of it is due to the pressures of life because we're devalued. And it continues right on into the elderly. And one of these days, they'll be putting us older people out of our minds, out of our misery, whatever it is. They'll start knocking us off because they don't value. See, this is what it is in life anymore, of little value. God gives value. How do we know? Look at the Ten Commandments. It says, give value to God. Give value to your parents. Give value to your neighbor. Jesus takes it a step farther. Give value to your enemies. Love them. Do good to them, even though they're doing bad things to you. So God, the Bible, Jesus, it's all saying give value to people. And we miss this in so many ways. When I was on the farm, we had a nice lawn tractor, a John Deere. Loved that thing. Hydrostat. It was the latest, greatest thing of the time. Large mower deck on it. And we also had a nice big pole shed, machinery shed. Both of them were relatively new. And our firstborn daughter was now old enough to mow the yard. And she'd been mowing it for quite some time, so she knew what she was doing. And one day she turned to go back into mowing beside where she was at, and she got a little too close to the pole shed. And the mower caught it, and there was this nice crease on the side of my pole shed. I didn't just get angry. I erupted. I went into a rage. How could she be so stupid? How could I be so stupid? I gave that piece of metal on the pole shed more value than I gave to my daughter. Jacob was at least giving value to people. I gave value to a pole shed and devalued my daughter while I was at it. Guys, let me talk to you for a little bit. We devalue our wives in ways that we don't think about. Now, let me see if this situation rings a bell. Your anniversary, birthday, special day, or whatever's coming. Actually, it's here. And your wife has to remind you of it. And then when you try to do something, she's mad at you. And you're confused. Well, I did what you wanted me to do. I finally, you reminded me, we had a nice dinner and so forth, and she's still angry at you. Do you know why? Because you didn't value her on your own. Yes, we did what we needed to do, and we actually enjoyed it. Oops, I'm sorry. But we didn't value her by remembering it ourselves. And so, see, there's so many ways that we devalue others without actually realizing it. Giving value is easy when we think about it. I mean, it's sitting here, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I give everybody value, but do we really? We're at a party, maybe we're here at church, we're talking to somebody. This happens to me on the way out. I'm greeting people. Somebody wants to talk. Okay, I'm talking to them, but fine. Somebody else comes up, wants to talk. I had to ask a college professor. I called a college professor up. What do I do? And he said, just give a nod to the person that's waiting that you recognize them and continue, try to finish that conversation up. But so many of us, we're in a conversation with a friend, somebody else walks up and they want to join in. It's not an intimate conversation. And we just ignore them. Or we're in a group and we don't acknowledge the person that now has come up that wants to join the group. We devalue them. Very unkind. How are you doing at giving value? How are you doing at giving value at home? How many late hours of work do you need to work and let your spouse or kids by themselves? Now, I know our kids are in a lot of activities and grandkids a lot of activities. You can't go to all of them probably, but how many do we miss and we devalue our kids? Or that special event with our spouse. I'm going out with the guys tonight. I'm going out with the girls. This is the girls' night. When the spouse was wanting to do something else too. See, God values each of us equally. How do we know? For God so loved the world that He gave His Son for us. That's value. That's the most value that anyone could ever give to us. So the next time that you're at any place and you see this person off by themselves, smile at them. Catch their eye. Wave at them. Better yet, go have a visit with them. Don't have to stay all day, but just spend some time with them. Give them value. Go out of your way. This is part of what we hope to do this afternoon at the care center, is to give value to these elderly that are in the home. So we go and we spend a little bit of time with them. Help to give them value. Let's pray. Almighty Father in heaven, man, we're really bad at this at times. I really think maybe the older we get, the better we get at doing it, but we still slip up, we still forget. So, Father, help us, open our eyes to have a heart for other people. And even those misfits, those people that's a little different. After all, we're different in our own way, and if we get into the crowd that's unlike what we are, we're the ones that's going to be devalued. So let us give value where we can. After all, you gave us value, and so did Jesus. And it's in His name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you for watching the message. If we can help you in any way, we ask that you please contact us. Check us out on our website at roscoppchurch.org. You can find the information there, how to contact us. We'd love to hear from you, talk with you, and help you in your walk with Jesus. Thank you once again for joining with us.